1997, Fox premiered their newest animated sitcom to the world, King of the Hill. It followed the Hill family, Hank, Peggy, and their son Bobby, as they navigate their lives in Arlen, Texas. They would interact with a nice cast of secondary characters, including Peggy's niece Luann, and Hank's friends, Dale, Bill, and Boomhauer. Add in some ensuing shenanigans, and you got yourself a successful show. And successful it was, running for a dozen years before being cancelled in 2009. Yet, the show had made its mark on pop culture, and cultivating a wide fanbase, to the point where a revival of the series is set to premiere this summer. King of the Hill is personally one of my favorite shows of all time. From the first time I watched reruns on Adult Swim, it left a lasting impression. Whether the episodes centered on Dale's constant schemes, or Hank's job at Strickland Propane, I always stuck around to watch each one, and I loved most of what I saw. However, despite the show running for a dozen years, the show didn't get a ton of merchandise released during its original run. This would at first seem confusing, considering the amount of merchandise fellow Fox shows, The Simpsons, and Family Guy had during a similar time period. However, it's understandable why this would be. King of the Hill had more realistic looking designs compared to the former shows. As such, making merchandise based on them would have been more complicated to recreate. Their less cartoony designs also didn't make them pop out as much, which might have made companies hesitant to produce them. Nowadays, things have gotten better. We've had some newer figures and plushes released, but while the show was still airing back in the day, there were only two noteworthy sets of merchandise. One was the rare Fun for All plush set, and the other was a set of action figures. Yep, in 2002, the company ToyCom got the license to produce a series of figures based on the sitcom, releasing them in two waves. Wave 1 was released in November with Hank, Peggy, Dale, and Bill, while Wave 2 released the following February, with Boomhauer, Luann, and Bobby. These figures were released both online and in retail stores, albeit in limited quantities, making them rare and desirable nowadays, and can cost hundreds of dollars for just one character, making collecting the entire set a challenge to complete. I personally only have Hank and Dale at the moment, though they were the ones I wanted the most, so that's fine with me. Today, I'm going to be looking back at these figures. I'll talk about the entire set, albeit with Hank and Dale having a more in-depth inspection since I have them, and see if these figures still hold up over 2 decades later. So let's get started. Welcome to a look back at the ToyCom King of the Hill action figures. Let's start off with the assistant manager of Strickland Propane himself, Hank Hill. The first thing most would immediately take note of with these figures is their designs. Each character is sculpted pretty accurately to their counterparts from the cartoon. This is evident in even the more minor details. For example, Hank's waist is a bit pudgy, with detail indicating his shirt is tucked into his pants. I like that. Hank also has his wedding ring, which is an aspect so minor that I compliment the people at ToyCom for including it on the figure. As for how Hank himself looks, well, he certainly seems to be having a rough day, what with his frown, downward eyebrows, and slightly squinted eyes. My guess is that Hank looks so sad because they were trying to recreate how he looks in the intro. That is an appropriate idea, but I think they overdid it. Another thing odd about Hank is his skin color. It's very pale. Hank isn't supposed to have skin this light. With it, he kinda looks dead, which is a bad look for Hank. Combine this with his sad expression, and he just looks like he doesn't want to be here. Everything else about Hank's appearance is pretty good. His hair has a bit of texture at the front to represent its short cut, which is cool to see. His glasses are rightly sized, and square like the ones Hank wears in the show. His ears are small, but decently shaped, while his shirt is the correct white he always wore. Hank can stand good enough on his own, though he'll occasionally tip over, which means he'll probably suffer back pain like Hank from the show. He's got the right pants, belt, shoes. He's even got his watch on his left hand, along with pocket details on the front and back. Hank's right knee is even positioned a little more outward than the other knee, which while strange at first glance, does make the figure come off as more natural than if he were standing perfectly still. However, while on the subject of Hank's legs, it's as good a time as any to talk about this figure's articulation. Hank has 7 points of articulation, which is the most of any figure in this line, though it's not the most efficient. Why do I say that? Well, Hank can move at his head, shoulders, waist, and can move the arm that holds his drink. However, the final 2 points of articulation are here at his legs. I don't know why these exist. His legs aren't designed to move up and down, just to turn. It doesn't look right. When would Hank have legs that look like this? It's so inefficient. He should have had his legs stationary like his friends. ToyCom didn't need to make his legs like this, but I guess it makes him unique. Take what you can, I guess. These figures also came with some accessories. All of them contain a piece of fence that when put together, showcases the King of the Hill logo. It's a great backdrop, and really makes it satisfying when someone is able to complete the whole set. Hank and the guys each come with an additional accessory, in the form of a can of their favorite drink, Alamo beer. However, the beer doesn't look right. Alamo has a very specific appearance, yet ToyCom went a different way, presenting it in a green and brown appearance. It looks like an energy drink, which is definitely something Hank wouldn't want to drink. I can't find any stock art that represents Alamo like this, so I'm not sure how ToyCom came up with this design. Speaking of design, the design of the packaging for each figure is also appropriate. Each character has their name, aspects they are known for, and a quote to represent their personality, which makes them all stand apart from one another. It also includes pictures of the other characters that were released by ToyCom, which is nice to know for those who'd want to know what other characters there are to collect. Anyways, that's about all I have to say about Hank. I do like the figure, but he could have been a bit more accurate to how Hank looked at this point in the show's run. Since this figure was modeled from the intro, it also means he was based on Hank's character model from the first season, where he had a different design compared to the rest of the series. But this figure was released in December of 2002, during season 7, so he should have looked more like Hank did that season. For comparison on what I mean, here's the Fat Mojo figure of Hank released in 2018. It's not as complex as ToyCom's, but it better captures Hank's characteristics. He's got a more appropriate color for his skin, a better facial expression. He's even got the correct Alamo design. So yeah, Hank may not be the most consistent with how he should normally look, but he's still a well-made figure, and definitely a unique one to collect. Here's the Exterminator, Dale Gribble. He's probably my favorite of the whole set, and an upgrade from Hank in more ways than one. His stance is very Dale-like, as he slouches near his neck area, which is noticeable when he's next to someone like Hank. This is accurate to the show though. Another accuracy is with Dale's skin. It suits him more than what was done for Hank. His face overall is well done. I especially like his raised eyebrow, as if he was trying to decipher something hidden from him. His glasses are black, with detail added to indicate the sun shining from them. The glasses are meant to be colored gray, but I assume it was probably done to make the shine detail pop out more. My glasses shine detail is a little worn though, but it still replicates said shine decently. One cool little hidden detail is that Dale does in fact have eyes behind the sunglasses, and they are done very well. ToyCom didn't need to go through the effort for a detail most wouldn't bother looking for, but they did. Also, I gotta give props for adding a bump in Dale's neck here. Another great attention to detail. One notable detail missing on Dale is the logo of his hat, which is supposed to have the Mack Truckers logo. This product image of Dale here shows him with said logo, so I'm not entirely sure why the final figure doesn't. My best guess is copyright. This set was made to release in limited quantities, so ToyCom probably didn't want to spend much to get the rights from Mack to use their logo for a set of figures they would only release briefly. It's a shame, but understandable. His shirt is correct, with them even having the white shirt shown to be underneath. I like how they include his little shirt pocket to hold his smokes, which Dale needs, even on his figure. He's even holding a smoke in his right hand, so this Dale figure won't ever have to worry about going smokeless. Just like with Hank, Dale also has his watch and his wedding ring. The ring itself doesn't pop out as much as Hank's, but it's there, a sign of Dale's ever-loving commitment to his wife. How faithful. Just as faithful as his pants and shoes, which are designed well. I also like Dale's belt, and how it has his brown pouch with some detail indicating how it opens. That's pretty neat. As for articulation, he can move his head, shoulders, waist, and drinking arm, all just like Hank. Dale thankfully doesn't have the cut into his leg sculpt like Hank, which I think was the right choice. But there's still one area of articulation ToyCom managed to include. The most unique aspect of Dale that makes him stand out from this entire set is that his right arm has a cut joint to allow it to move upward. This allows Dale to be able to smoke the cigarette he holds. It's a great addition, and allows Dale to pull off more poses than he would have otherwise. Though, a downside to these poses is that my Dale specifically has his feet not entirely flat, so he can fall over if I'm not careful. This doesn't seem to be an issue on other Dales, thankfully, and even my Dale is sturdy enough to be an exterminator, which is awesome. Dale is a gem of a figure. He's not the most complex figure imaginable, but he's the perfect representation of what ToyCom set out to accomplish with these figures, and I love him for that. Now, as I already said, I don't have the rest of the set, so I can't show them off in person. However, to be honest, I'd have less to talk about each of them for their own sections than I did with Hank and Dale. So I'll just run through the remaining 5 figures released in just one section. Peggy is a little weird looking, though not as much as her husband. Her most noteworthy aspect is with her shirt. Her main attire is her wearing a green, sleeveless blouse, yet ToyCom designed her figure to have a shirt with short sleeves. While Peggy does occasionally wear a shirt like this, that usually occurs while she is substitute teaching. So I find it strange ToyCom went in this direction. The rest of her is standard Peggy Hill though, so good work. Bill Dauterive is honestly pretty average for me. He's not a bad figure though. He does replicate Bill's design well, with the body and head. I also like his packaging's quote for him, and the figure represents that aspect of Bill's character well, so he's ready for service. Boomhauer is pretty cool looking, and his accuracy to the show shines through probably the best of the entire line. My favorite detail is probably his beady eyes. They're just so iconic. Luann Platter is also a pretty good looking figure all around. My main issue with her is why exactly is she holding lip gloss in her hand? With Dale holding a cigarette, it made sense, and fits his character. Lip gloss isn't as synonymous with Luann, but maybe they wanted to make her be able to beauty herself up, like how she does with cutting people's hair. Finally, we have Bobby. He looks a bit doughy here. It might just be because of the way his chin looks, or the type of paint his skin uses. It's a bit goofy, but that's probably preferable to a comedian like Bobby. He looks great. Certainly preferable to the bendable Bobby figure released by Sunny Days in 2019. Yikes. All these figures have neck, shoulder, and waist articulation. The family apparently have leg articulation like Hank, though images of them in action are more scarce to find. Which is understandable. Most people probably don't even know they can do it. If ToyCom was going to design their legs to stand in one spot, what's the point in giving only the family the ability to turn their legs around, but not move them up or down? I don't get it. As for accessories, aside from the fence pieces, Bill and Boomhauer come with their Alamos. Peggy comes with a trash bag, which for the longest time, I never understood why she'd have that as an accessory, until I realized it was done to recreate the intro, where she brings Hank said trash bag. So that's neat. Bobby has by far the best accessory. Through the inclusion of the Hills family dog, Lady Bird. She perfectly captures her appearance in the cartoon. And she can move her head too, so I guess that makes this set have 8 characters. It makes up for Wave 2 having 1 human character less at least. Oh, and Luann got nothing. She only has the fence. I guess they couldn't think of anything to give her. Well, that was the remaining figures released. There were some odd choices when designing them, but overall, I do like all of them. They each captured the characters well. And for a toy line based on an anime and sitcom like this, that's really all they needed. Now that we've discussed all the released figures, we have one more subject left from the ToyCom line to discuss, and that is all the unreleased figures and ideas. For one, Wave 2 was originally going to have sound chips in each of the characters so they could speak, but this was dropped for the final release, probably because it would have been too expensive to reproduce, especially for the kind of release they were pushing for. ToyCom marketed their King of the Hill line as a limited release, yet they seem to have pondered the idea of expanding the line for more than just 2 waves, to the point where they even went as far as to sculpt at least 2 characters to test as possible figures. Those 2 were Hank's father Cotton and Hank's neighbor, Con Supernussophone. We have these images because ToyCom showed off these prototypes in an issue of Toy Fair magazine, which had already advertised the previous 2 waves. Now, these are just the sculpts of the figures, so they aren't finalized like the others, but we can still get the general idea of how they were meant to look. Khan looks like he should. No shins and all. He's holding GH, otherwise known as Good Hank, his baby son born at the beginning of Season 4, who I'm guessing would have been Khan's accessory if he had been finalized. A weird choice? but I suppose Khan would personally want GH with him. Khan is definitely the more rough looking one. They didn't even scope in his eyes yet. Khan does have eyes, even if they are presented as squinted due to his Laotian ethnicity. He also wasn't given an accessory, though I'm not entirely sure what they could have given him. I don't know where these prototypes are located nowadays. Most likely they are archived by a former employee, with a collector, or were destroyed to make use of their material. That's tragic to think about, but at least we have these images that show they once existed, and that ToyCom actually thought about expanding the lineup to include them. A promotional advertisement for the figures went a bit further than just them though. Listed in the coming soon section, you of course have Cotton and Khan, but with the addition of Khan's wife Min, their daughter Connie, John Redcorn, and Chuck Mangione. They all were also secretly hinted at on the release packaging, as they can all be seen peeking from behind the fence on the back, waiting for the chance to be bought as well. Heck, I even found an archive where ToyCom asked people to vote on who their favorite King of the Hill characters were, and one of the options was Joseph, Dale's son, who wasn't even listed to be a part of the next wave. Maybe ToyCom thought about making a figure of him too. What an alternate timeline that would have been. However, none of these were ever released. As far as I am aware, none of them were even given prototypes. Just Khan and Cotton. Why weren't they made? Well, there are a few possibilities. As stated previously, ToyCom's line was meant to be a limited one, so they might not have had time to make new figures before the license was lost. That said, if the figures sold well, renewing the license was an easy solution. A more likely reason for why more characters weren't made is probably because the figures that were released didn't sell too well. True, they were more limited figures to sell compared to a line like Playmate's World of Springfield, so obviously they wouldn't make as big of a profit with less stock. But it's clear, even when taking into account their limited release, that it was tough trying to sell them. Occasionally, figures that appear up on the secondhand market still have stickers which show they had marked down prices and were put up for clearance. This indicates that it was probably a hassle for stores trying to get them sold back in the day, as they took up shelf space that would be better used for more profitable toys. Making a third wave didn't make sense from a business perspective. I mean, how many people would really buy a figure of Chuck Mangione? King of the Hill was a great show, but its supporting cast wasn't as marketable as their fellow Fox series, The Simpsons, and the later Family Guy too. It took until the 7th season for Toy Company to release action figures of the show, which was a much longer wait than the other two. Having toys of the more niche characters would just clog up the stores, so ToyCom thought it was best to just have the simple 2 waves and be done with it. While I mourn the absence of a figure of Khan Supernusiphone, the figures we did get are more than enough. So, I am content with only having them exist for their line at the very least. It really is a shame there isn't more merchandise based off of King of the Hill. ToyCom's line wasn't perfect and was most likely a bit overpriced, but it had heart. The appearances of some of the characters may have been a bit off, yet it showed their personality in a way that was commendable. It makes it all the more tragic that the line underperformed. Their lack of profitability made other companies see any future merch as too huge of a gamble, which combined with the original show's conclusion, creating a 15-year wait for any new figures to be produced. I like the merch we've gotten since then, but nothing has really matched with the quality ToyCom managed to have, which I can understand. Your average onlooker might see the show and think it's boring. What with its down-to-earth setting? Why go through the trouble to make quality figures of it? What's the point? So, they probably wouldn't want to buy a figure of some assistant manager who sells propane and propane accessories. I think that's unfair. Sure, the show had a more realistic world and characters than its contemporaries, but said show portrayed these realistic-looking characters and experiencing more wacky situations than wouldn't be as easily found in our reality, while still having them feel grounded in spite of their medium being a cartoon. That's an accomplishment to me. I think the show should have a bit more merch, especially compared to what was released during that original run, and I'm glad we've gotten some the past half dozen years. Maybe with the revival, a new company will produce a whole new line of action figures we can all get excited about. If not, and ToyComs are the only complete line we'll have, then that's okay. They are a small, yet complete, set of figures that are great to have, and I hope people in the future can have the opportunity to own even just one piece from this wonderful set. Yep.